Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at kind of a new card-ish. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Rocky Helmet is being reprinted. And on the one hand, this is not a new card. We've seen Rocky Helmet before. We have, in fact, seen a very, very, very cool gold version of it, which I believe will still be legal when this comes out, which is nice. But on the other hand, we haven't actually seen this since it came out in Boundaries Crossed. And Boundaries Crossed came out in November 2012. Weirdly enough, it also came out in Noble Victories in November 2011. Kind of a November thing for a little while, and then it dropped off the map entirely. So, yes, I am making a video about a card that's being reprinted, but I'm also making a video about a card which has been reprinted after having 8 years between the last print, which I think at this stage, near as darn it makes it a new card. Either way, this could be a very cool card. Now, for those of you that weren't playing back then, who needs a quick reminder as to exactly what it is Rocky Helmet does, it is a Pokemon tool that attaches to one of your Pokemon, and if that Pokemon is damaged by an attack, even if they're knocked out, you place 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Nice! And we've seen a bunch of Pokemon with abilities like this. We'll get there in a minute. We've seen it on other cards as well. But this is just a Pokemon tool that does a little bit of extra damage. And the fact of the matter is, this is exactly the kind of card that can swing matchups. We know that doing extra damage is always good. That's not exactly a new thing. I've been saying that for a very long time. And at the moment, in terms of extra damage, our options aren't great. We've got Vitality Band, which is an item card that lets you do an extra 10 damage, which is nice, but that's only half as much as you'll do with Rocky Helmet. We've got Galarian Zigzagoon, the one you play it from your hand to your bench, drops 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon, which again is half of this, although you do have the option of using Scoop Up Net to pick it back up, and then of course you can play it back down again, drop a damage, and so on and so forth. But again, we're running into this awkward situation here where you're having to play multiples of these just to get the same amount of damage on the board as a Rocky Helmet. And then of course we got Arceus and Dialga and Palkia, which means that all of your Pokemon do an extra 30 damage for the rest of the game, but given that that's a GX attack on a free prize Pokemon, I don't think it's particularly analogous here. And what this does is it drops extra damage. Every time you get hit, it takes extra damage. I mean, if you're worried against something like Spiritomb, for instance, and Spiritomb should still be a good card post-rotation, this is a phenomenal answer to something like Spiritomb. Spiritomb's got an attack that does 10 damage, plus 30 more for each damage counter on it, and an ability that places a damage counter on it. And the thing is that Spiritomb is at its best when there are 5 damage counters on. Well, if Spiritomb's got 4 damage counters on, or 5, they will get KO'd attacking into this. And that's an awkward thing, right? They've got to stay at 3 damage counters just to be able to survive their own attack. And the thing about Spiritomb is that it's a single prize Pokemon, and it goes after 2 or 3 prize Pokemon, and that's how it wins a prize race. If you're KOing yourself when you attack using Spiritomb, and then probably having another Pokemon KO'd because you've got to put something active going into your opponent's turn, and then they get a free hit on it, that is not how you win the prize race. And that's why this is so good against something like Spiritomb. Now, of course, as I'm sure a bunch of you have already figured out, we do kind of have this card at the moment, albeit in energy form. It's Horror Psychic Energy. This is literally Horror Energy. That was an energy card that you attach, and it is a psychic energy. But when attached to a psychic Pokemon, if they take damage from an attack, even if they're KO'd, you put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. And the reason I feel really comfortable saying that Rocky Helmet is good is because Horror Energy is good. Dragapult is really the psychic deck that sees play at the moment, and Dragapult pretty much always plays Horror Energy as a 4-off. And that really is the psychic energy that sees play right now. So, if we've got this as an energy card in Horror Energy, and the only deck that really can play that routinely plays it as a 4 of, that should give you some idea of how good this card can be. Now, maybe it just so happens that Dragapult has a huge amount of matchups where those 2 damage counters make a difference. And to be fair, it is worth pointing out that Dragapult does drop damage counters, and the attack is fairly weak to begin with. The main attack, it only does 130, which for a VMAX is quite weak. So maybe it is just the fact that Dragapult needs the extra damage and they're dropping damage counters and it all adds up in a perfect storm. But I think there is an excellent chance here that actually it's just a good effect. And of course, if you're playing this in a Psychic deck, you can totally combine the effects. So what you can do is play Rocky Helmet with a bunch of Horror Energy. I mean, I talk about Porygon Z way too much, alright? I am fully aware of this. But it lets you attach as much special energy during your turn as you like, and I'm still convinced there is a broken deck to be made with Porygon Z. So let's say you've got a Psychic Pokemon, you're playing Porygon Z, you attach 4 Horror Energy, and then you attach this, and your opponent has to take 100 damage counters to attack. Just to attack. 10 damage counters, 100 damage. 100 damage counters would be 1,000 damage. That would be dumb. You all know what I meant. And I know at this stage you could very easily just go, yeah, that's Giant Bomb. And you're right. Giant Bomb does put 10 damage counters, 100 damage on the attacking Pokemon. But only if you would take 180 or more damage, and it falls off at the end of your turn, so it's not exactly a terribly fair comparison. Now, another thing to point out, of course, is that we do have a bunch of ways around this right now. You can just play Tool Scrapper, it's a tool that gets rid of it. Tool Scrapper away the Rocky Helmet, and then you're good to go. You can just attack in and you're fine. The other option you've got is to make your opponent switch their active. You could play something like Boss's Orders to actually pick whichever Pokemon you want and bring it from the bench into the active. Or something like Fione would actually work really nicely here, in the same way we use Fione with Lily's Pokédoll. If they've got 2 Pokemon with Rocky Helmet attached, it's not going to do you any good, they'll just put the other one up. But if they've only got 1 Pokemon with Rocky Helmet attached, you can just use Fione, make them switch their active, and sure, they get a choice of which one they bring active, but it doesn't really matter, whichever one they bring active isn't going to have a Rocky Helmet on, and you won't have to take the damage. And again, if you're playing a Pokemon like Spiritomb here, it could be really relevant. I mean, this is great. In any matchup where you're expecting your opponent to have 20 HP remaining, this is awesome. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're using a Reshiram and Charizard against a Pikachu and Zekrom. Now, Reshiram and Charizard hits for 230, Pikachu and Zekrom has 240. That's awkward. So what you can do here, now you could use a Vitality Band, or you could use this. And now, if your opponent attacks into you, they get KO'd when they attack. But the thing about Pikachu and Zekrom is, they've only got really one good way to accelerate energy, and that's Pikachu and Zekrom's attack full blitz. Sure, they've got stuff like Tapu Koko, but they'll generally use that to get the first Pika-Rom up and rolling. So now they can either not attack, but then they're not accelerating energy, or they can attack and they give up free prizes, and oh look how that happened. Or you can put this on when you're not ready to be attacking yet, and if your opponent attacks into you, they then put themselves in range. And that's a big difference between this and something like Vitality Band. You can put this on before you attack, and your opponent attacks and put themselves in range, rather than just using it to do that last little bit of extra damage. My point is, this is a very, very nice Pokemon tool. Did it see play first time round? Yes, it saw a bunch of play. Was it an absolute top tier staple in every deck? No, it wasn't. It saw a bunch of play in a bunch of decks, but wasn't some kind of out-and-out must-play in every single deck. And the fact of the matter is, it is probably going to be matchups that will determine exactly how good this ends up being. You might not want to blindly play it in every single deck, but there is a very good chance that you do want to play it for particular matchups. And then, of course, you've got a whole bunch of other Pokemon here that can really take advantage of it. I mean, the Sigilif from Rebel Clash really springs to my mind here. This is the one that's got an ability that puts 3 damage counters on when you attack it. So then with one of these, it will be 5. And an attack that does 30 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. And it's a Pokemon that can use Horror Energy, so 1 Horror Energy, 1 of these, you've got to take 7 damage counters to attack it, and that's kind of cool. And we see Pokemon like this all the time. There's going to be more, ladies and gentlemen, and they're all going to love this. I'm giving this an apprehensive between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. I'm not ready to sit here and say that this is some kind of phenomenal, out-and-out, over-the-top powerhouse card that is going to instantly become a staple in every deck, because I don't think that's true. What I do think, however, is that this is the kind of card that's going to make its way into a whole bunch of decks and is going to flip matchups and provide that extra amount of damage that you need in order to win the game. And that makes it a pretty good card for me. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.